G'day guys, this will be my review of the newly released InfiRay FH35 thermal scanner. During the review, I'll be splicing over a heap of thermal clips recorded by the Finder. I will note that from what I can see, the recorded videos are degraded in detail versus what you see in the eyepiece. They seem to be about 70% quality, but hopefully it'll give you an idea of the device performance in field conditions. Straight up, full clarity, Craig from gothermal.com.au did send me the device for the review. I've been friends with him for a while now and he's just launched a new website. There's a link in the description below, go check it out. But, and there's a big but, I'm not sending this scanner back. I've decided to buy it for myself with my own cold hard cash, if that's any indication to what I think of the device. If you want the full rundown on it, keep watching the video. As a baseline, before I jump into anything, this is my trusty InfiRay E6 Plus V2 thermal scanner. I've owned this scanner since September 2020 and it has served me very faithfully. The E6 shares a lot of common specs with this little Finder FH35R, so I was keen to see what the difference was with the image. I'll also give you my thoughts versus the Helion 2 XP50 Pro, which is my other thermal scanner that I do run. Both these thermals are obviously InfiRay made 640, 512, 12 micron devices. Both have a 35mm f1 focusable objective lens. Obviously both are the same detection range for a human-sized heat source at around 1800 metres. Both have the same field of view and base magnification. Where they differ is the Finder has a removable battery and obviously an 800 metre laser rangefinder. The eyepiece screen on the Finder is now also an OLED 1024 by 768 display, and the sensor on the Finder is reported as slightly improved sub 35 millikelvin, whereas the E6 is apparently 40 millikelvin. I've had the Finder out in the field for about 25 hours now total use. Being familiar with my E6 didn't take me too long to figure out that for the price, this little thing's a winner. Hopefully I've gauged all the highlights of the device that you guys will want to know about. As usual, this review won't be all arse-licking love because I was sent the scanner. There's a few things I'll nitpick and compare to what else I own and have used in the past. General form factor and size. I'm not going to run through all the menus and that jazz. What I will say is the buttons are very intuitive. They've got a good feel and positioning in the L-type layout. I've had very little trouble jumping straight into field use with this scanner. Matter of fact, the first night I received the device, I jumped the gate on a farm and bumped straight into 3 wild dogs at 250 metres. High stakes straight off the bat, and I had very little trouble running this scanner without a lot of time with it. Big tick there. Menus are icon based, but being used to the InfiRay system on my E6, I didn't really have any confusion. For those unfamiliar though, some type of text would be welcome in the menus, I'm sure. It sits very nicely in your hand with the flat design and the button layout. Especially considering it has a LRF, it's a very compact little unit. Although I will note, it isn't as small as the FH35R, which wasn't much bigger than a regular rangefinder. It's just my opinion versus the slightly smaller and older FH25R. The new FH35R is the better device. Obviously that does depend on your use and the budget too. The general build quality of the InfiRay gear is vastly improving. This little Finder is well made with solid plastic and aluminium components. The lens cover is a robust little aluminium thing and the eye cup is very comfortable. Eye cup's almost pulsar-like and it's clear they are taking cues off other companies' devices. I did put a little magnet on the lens cap to hold it fully open. As good as the lens cap is, being anodized aluminium and it's very easy to rotate, it's got that slight grinding noise that the material makes. I did feel that that little amount of noise might give me away in the dark if this clanged around or made that noise while I was hunting. With it latched open, I don't have that problem anymore. The battery, it's removable and a big win over internal device batteries. The battery life seems to be about 5 or 6 hours. The best thing is the Finder comes with 2 batteries and a little charger dock. Not an issue to get through a whole night anymore. You can also run an external USB battery lead into the scanner for constant powering and charging via a Type-C USB input. This is my plan to do on the quad bike when I'll be running it on the remote screen with the LRF in constant scan mode all night. My E6 internal battery has definitely degraded with use over time. This was the same 6-hour rating when it was new, but I find now 3 to 4 hours pulls it up. It's not a big issue and they can be replaced if you send them away, but that's a bit of a hassle to send things to distributors for it to be done. If the battery is removable, like the new Finder, you just buy another one if it dies and you keep using your thermal. That's a plus. The battery itself is easy to put in with this little red line-up indicator. Just goes in, twists, locks down. It's nice and easy to use. It's probably just an 18650 battery in a proprietary housing like Pulsar uses with their APS Thermion batteries. It sucks in some ways as they charge much more than what a generic 18650 is worth, but with them in these housings they do lock in well, so that format is good, not a huge complaint there. Startup time. I've talked about this before, and obviously brands like Pulsar and others, they are in another league with just how quickly the devices do fire up and be fully operational. The Finder is around 24 seconds from off to fully functional menus. Slow and probably an indicator of a lesser processor to keep the cost down, but it is acceptable for a scanner to me. If it was a rifle scope, I'd have a massive big whinge. For anyone not sure what standby in a thermal is, it's when you have the eyepiece screen turned off so it doesn't illuminate your body in the dark. It'll also assist in saving a little bit of battery life. On this Finder, if you can see it in the sunlight, there's this little flashing green light here to indicate when it is in standby. I appreciate that as a user as opposed to just a completely black display. Sometimes when you don't know a device is in standby, you just leave them on, you end up with flat batteries. The LRF, how's that to use? In short, it's excellent. It's rated at 800 metres and I've pinged ranges out to 750 metres off large trees. Practically, it is quite powerful and you'll struggle to not get a range in scan mode, even over flat grass paddocks out to about 500 metres. It's just one button to turn straight into scan mode. It does have a single range option, but I personally don't use that. To turn it off, it's just a single press on the power button to deactivate the LRF, and a second press on that power button turns off the eyepiece screen. It's very simple. I will note that it's a very compact little LRF and they've done well to get it this small on the device. Focus is nice and smooth to rotate, with the speed about perfect to snap onto a precise image. Depth of focus is also nice and broad. It's not a device I tweak all the time like I do on my Helion. Image, what's my take on that? One of the most common questions I get asked is it worth saving up a little bit more or upgrading to a 640 resolution device in your thermal scanner? Just my opinion, a big firm yes. Will a 384 resolution thermal get the job done? Probably, but depending on the device. But with a 640, generally you'll get more image detail, better detection range, and a lower base magnification. I've touched on it multiple times in the past. For me, I want my scanner to be under 2.5 times base mag for the wide field of view, but still offering good target detail. What I see some of the 384 scanners getting is up around the 3.5 times base mag. Some are a little bit higher. That might be fine for some people, but I would struggle to use such a device in the rolling terrain that I hunt. Each to their own, I guess, and I can only offer personal opinion after using many different thermal scanners. The Finder is a 35 millikelvin sensor. Straight away you can see the image improvement overall compared to my E6. The actual target animal I would say is very similar between the two devices, but where the lower millikelvin rating shines is showing more terrain detail, grass, gullies, little dips, trees, things like that. It's also less susceptible to flare out if you scan over a ridgeline with a heap of sky or atmosphere in the view. My E6 has always been niggly in this regard, but I'm just used to it. So no, I'm not seeing a massive gain on animal image detail alone at range compared to my E6. With the specs so close, I wouldn't expect it to either. But overall, the Finder is a better image. This might be a negative in some scenarios, but the 35mK sensor is more susceptible to show heat source in terrain versus an actual animal. Rocks, trees, logs, they can show up as a very hot colour tone, and it can be hard to determine what is alive and what is not. Now I'm talking at ranges 200 metres plus here. I did find that the image or temperature gap is easier to see with my E6 as it's not as sensitive. Pros and cons to both, but it has been nice with my E6 for animals to really pop as a hotspot in the image. The finder, while having more detail, depending on the terrain, can take a more detailed look to determine what it actually is that you're looking at. I do find the image on these InfiRay devices a little bit cartoon-like. Those of you that have used one will know exactly what I mean. Now, I'm not saying that as a knock on the device. It's not a bad thing, but I think I'm to the point now that you could hand me an unbranded thermal that came out of that factory and I'd just about pick it on image alone. There are 6 colour palettes on the finder, but I tend to only use white, black, sometimes red hot. The others, to me, are more of a novelty. Something worth noting is the ability to run a cool or warm white hue on the image. I do prefer the warm white personally, and it's a nice choice to have in the system menu. There is no adjustability to the image on my E6. Screen brightness and that's it. The finder does have brightness and sharpness adjustment of 4 levels, although there is a but. What's lacking is the brightness is just the display. It's not a sensor adjustment in any way, unlike the pulsar gear. Sharpness and brightness, I find I set that to the 3rd level, and that's about right for me. What the finder does have is ultra clear mode, which is meant for higher humidity or wet foggy nights. Basically, this seems to boost the contrast, and I've found it somewhat useful to use when the conditions do get challenging. The finder image is not as susceptible to brightness compensation to the hottest object in view, like if you scan past large hot cows and you can't see past them. My E6, it is pretty chronic for this sometimes, and the finder is a much flatter image. You can see obviously the heat of the large cow, but you can also see past it. This is a win and another aspect worthy of upgrade on this device. As for usable ID ranges, the finder, I'm comfortable getting ID on a moving fox to about 250 metres. I've a few clips taken with the device of foxes in stubble. It ranges from 1 to 200 metres, and there was no doubt at the time amongst sheep that I was viewing a fox. You'll see legs and a good outline at this range. Further than 200 metres, and like many thermals, you get a good feel after experience on ID based on body movement, but body shape tends to drop off past that range. Larger animals, you will ID further out. I had 3 wild dogs howling at me from about 400 or 500 metres one night. As they moved, I knew what they were, but stationary, you can't tell what it was at that range. Could be a kangaroo, it might be a hot broken off old fence post or a rock, but that's just how it is with thermal sometimes, depending on the quarry and your environment. I do find when comparing side by side to my E6 and Helion, the finder eyepiece screen does seem a little small to view, but in use with the device alone, not swapping between one and another, it doesn't bother me at all. Wi-Fi, I always hammer brands for this. I'm not really one to use Wi-Fi on a device like this for image streaming alone. I'll cover why next. But from my testing, it seems stable and works well for downloading footage. In my opinion, the image quality via Wi-Fi is again not as good as the eyepiece. Similar degradation to the recorded videos. I've had a little Google and it's interesting to see some websites listing Wi-Fi control and streaming to the app. At the moment, unless they're going to release an update, that's just not true. The app doesn't control the device. You can't remotely operate the finder in regards to colour palettes, zoom, or the LRF. Kind of annoys me to see things listed in a spec sheet from someone that's selling things that might easily be misleading. Even if it's in a future update, the current device can't do that. Wi-Fi control, inverted commas, control, means to me I can control the whole device. Yes, you can see the image remotely via Wi-Fi on a remote device. It would have been nice though to see the LRF reading as a minimum via Wi-Fi. Yes, that's right, the LRF doesn't display on Wi-Fi, which is a real shame. Again, like I said, a future firmware update might change that, but let's just see. Remote screen viewing. Let's jump straight across to that from the Wi-Fi to a hardwired image. This is one of the key reasons why I'm buying this device. You guys might have seen me use my thermal scanner on a Spotlight T-handle with a remote IPS screen on my ATV. My E6 has always been stellar in this regard because of the hardwired output directly into that screen. There's zero lag or latency at all when you pan around, and it works really, really well. Even with device progression and having the chance to use better thermal scanners in regards to image alone, aka my Helion, the E6 is still the better device for remote screen streaming, and as a hardwired image with no lag, no dropouts, the Finder fits that bill as well. The Finder is a mini HDMI video output, and it runs straight into my screen, similar to my trusty E6. Where I find the HDMI output is awesome is that it displays the whole eyepiece view, menus, colours, and importantly the LRF aiming box and a range. This is the gap to the Wi-Fi display and function that's missing. It also displays more information on the remote screen than my E6, even with that device hardwired. I can just run the Finder with the LRF on constant scan mode, and on my remote screen I get continual ranges displayed wherever I point the device. Very handy indeed, and a big step up from my E6 capacity with no LRF. Like I mentioned, for me, this is a key reason for upgrading. Sorry for the reflection on the images, but I have to film this with my camera onto the screen as my IPS screen doesn't natively record video and audio recording. The video quality is not a full visual representation of the eyepiece and what you'll see. There's about 30% degradation. Strangely, the file resolution is a matching 1024 by 768 to the eyepiece screen. I'd personally like the recordings to match the eyepiece display in view quality. It's probably not a big factor for many people, but obviously for me as a YouTuber, the video is an important aspect for me, and it is worth noting. Audio is a really odd one. There's an option in the menu system to turn a microphone on. Now, I will call a spade a spade. On my device, it's about as useless as tits on a bull. I've been using this device with the microphone activated next to people firing guns, and it doesn't even pick up a gunshot. All it gets is this really annoying, harsh crackling sound. Could be specific to my device, but it's not worth bothering with. You've probably noticed in all the footage that there's a little blue bracketed box in the center of the frame. That's the LRF aiming box. Unfortunately, the video doesn't record that. It's just the basic view. There's no LRF distance displayed or any of the icons on the device, which is a shame. At the least, it would have been nice to record the LRF ranges so you can recall events via video. But you can't do that, and that is another strike against the device from my perspective. How's the Finder stack up to my Helion 2 XP50 Pro? I know this is a question that will get asked down in the comments, so I might as well cover it. Is it a replacement or equivalent to the flagship Pulsar Helion? Straight out, no it's not. The Helion is an amazing device which has a bigger objective lens and better sensor. It's also worth noting that it's a few $1,000s more than the Finder, and in my opinion, you do get what you pay for. The Helion is still the best scanner based on image and raw thermal power alone I've had the pleasure to use. Aside from image, when comparing the two, you soon realise how immersive the eyepiece screen is on the Helion. For a nearly identical field of view, the screen on the Helion is a much larger view to my eye, and that relates to more image detail. I also really like the excellent audio capability of the Helion, which I'm often incorporating into my hunting videos. Why would I buy the Finder FH35R then? Simple. The hardwired image with an LRF will be fantastic on my remote screen ATV setup. The Finder is a marginal step up in image compared to my original E6, so it's a nice little upgrade there. Sometimes when I'm scanning less range and don't need the image clarity of the Helion, I'll run the Finder for the LRF function alone. Like shooting rabbits with a 22 long rifle, where knowing an accurate range is key. If I'm out requiring the best image I can get for ID, I'll take the Helion, as the performance gap is there. Here's an example. We were on a property shooting pigs the other week. I ran the Helion and the Finder side by side. We could ID pigs in amongst a few hundred sheep at ranges over 400 metres with the Helion. There's just more information and image detail reaching your eye. We could clearly see animals with the finder at that range, but you needed to get much closer for anything resembling clear ID to tell the difference from a pig to a sheep. Like I said, the gap is there, but you need to ask yourself if it is justified for the extra expense. If I was just trying to find a pig in a stubble paddock at say 400 metres with minimal livestock around, absolutely the finder will fill that role. It just depends on your expectations. For the price I'm seeing the finder FH35R listed at, which is around the 4,200 Aussie dollar mark, it's hard not to recommend them considering they are 640, have a removable battery and a really good LRF. All of those are very worthy features to have in your thermal scanner. I get asked a lot what the best $3,000 thermal scanner is you can buy. It's just my opinion. Now things have changed. Save a little bit more, get yourself a finder FH35R. I hope you found this video interesting and helpful in your quest for thermal device information. As usual, if you would like more detailed information and personal contact with me for advice, please consider my Patreon. I'm unbiased over there and you'll find more information on that platform compared to what I can share in the public space. For as little as $4.50 Aussie a month, that's a cup of coffee, you gain access to more information, personal contact, and additionally support what I'm doing. Again, a big thanks to Craig for sending me the device, although I don't think he's complaining because I've brought the bloody thing. Supporting people who send me products for reviews is a good way to continue the trend. If you do buy something off his website, put a comment in the sales note that you came across from the Edge of the Outback YouTube channel. Anyway, thanks for watching, give the video a thumbs up, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see everyone next time. Holy shit, I've had some challenges trying to film this. I've got my neighbour that's tried to whippersnip, I've got birds, I've had a bloody crow in the tree, traffic, my wife's yelled at me from inside. Talk about the challenges of first world problems.